Growing up in the 90s, the first introduction I had to Japanese animation was Pokemon. I remember growing up, I would wake up every Saturday morning to make sure I can catch it on 4Kids TV. Then, July 8th, 1999, the first big screen Pokemon movie came out. It's Pokemon, the first movie. Great title. Mewtwo Strikes Back. This film was directed by, and please excuse me for mispronouncing these Japanese names, Kurohiko Yaguma, and the screenwriter was Takashi Shudo. They put together an amazing story. This was the first time that I was actually, and a lot of people were able to see one of our regular cartoon shows on the big screen rather than seeing them on our crappies, cathode TVs back in the 90s. That's all we had. We were able to see Ash, Misty, Brock, and Pikachu, all voiced by famous voice actors such as Veronica Taylor, who voiced Ash, Misty, that was voiced by Rachel Lalas, and you have Brock, which was voiced by Eric Stewart. And then of course you had Pikachu, which, again, sorry for mispronouncing the Japanese names, Iku Otani. And the beautiful thing about this movie was the message that it delivered to all of the youth of that generation. Basically, the movie was telling us that no matter who you are or where you come from, the very little differences in our life aren't important at all. We have to notice everything that makes us human and to respect and love one another. Then, in 2020, Netflix decides, hey, let's make a remake. But they didn't just make a regular remake, they decided to make this completely CGI animated. Now, I'm not gonna lie, at first it was a bit weird to watch, especially going from the traditional animation that I grew up watching as a kid to watching this new CGI animation. It was a little bit weird, but once I got by that, I was able to appreciate how amazing the CGI animation was. This time around, all of the voice actors were different, except for Pikachu. Now Ash was voiced by Sarah Natacheni, sorry if I can't pronounce that right. Misty was voiced by Michelle Knotts. You have Brock being voiced by Bill Rogers, and then Pikachu was still, again, voiced by, and again, I'm sorry for mispronouncing these names, Ikote Otani. The remake, coming out in 2020, obviously looks amazing with the CGI animation, and they hit that right on the nail on the head. But just as they did good on that, they did fall short in other parts, especially when it came to sound and soundtrack. But I'll go more into detail on that later on in this video. Both movies have the same plot, so summarizing it is going to be pretty easy for me. They both tell the story of Mewtwo, a Pokemon that was created by humans and his journey to understanding his purpose in the world. In his quest, he sets up a ruse to lure in trainers to test his powers against them. This is when Ash, Misty, Brock, and Pikachu, and a bunch of other trainers, end up showing up and falling into his trap. But then through an emotional and very strong climax, Ash, with the help of his friends, ends up finally opening up Mewtwo's eyes and helping him understand his purpose and the reason that he was created. Now I'm going to give you guys an in-detail description of the actual movies. Basically, Pokemon the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back, starts off with humans trying to clone Mew. Mew is a rare and powerful ancient Pokemon. In doing so, once they actually accomplish their goal, they end up creating Mewtwo. Mewtwo, from his birth and conception, starts to question, why was I created? What is my purpose? None of the scientists answer him. He gets very angry and doesn't know what to do and loses control of his powers. Afterwards, he meets Giovanni, the leader of a criminal organization called Team Rocket. Giovanni tricks him and tells him, hey, we're going to be partners. Mewtwo trusts him and becomes his partner and works with him. Eventually, though, Mewtwo finds out that Giovanni was just using him as a tool, as a slave, just to do his bidding. Mewtwo finds this out, lashes out in rage, destroys Giovanni's base, and takes off. At this point, he now believes humans to be evil and decides that he's going to destroy all of them, along with their Pokemon slaves. And he's going to create clones of the slaves to make sure that their lives aren't lost. After the trainers lose their battle, Mewtwo decides to claim all of their Pokemon as his own and make clones of them and then dispose of the original. Before he can dispose of the original, though, Ash comes into the rescue and manages to foil his plans. He releases all of the originals and then meets up with Mewtwo on the battlefield. Now it's an army of the originals versus an army of the clones. And it becomes an all-out fight to the death. Seeing the destruction, all of the trainers are stunned. Ash, on the other hand, is the only one that actually decides to do something. Runs in the middle, takes the blast, and sacrifices himself. In doing so, though, he opens up Mewtwo's eyes. Mewtwo finally understands not all humans are bad, just some. And he decides that his purpose in life now is to help maintain that peace. He takes his clones and he leaves to go live a peaceful life. Alright, time for the fun stuff. The actual breakdown, the analysis between the two movies. What they did right and what they did wrong. And what they could have done better. Now, on one hand you have the original 1999 animation. It's a great storyline, amazing soundtrack. Then you have the 2020 CGI remake, which had amazing visuals. First, I want to start off with how amazing these visuals were. When it came down to it, in the original, you had green for grass. In the remake, you had individual blades of grass that you could see. You can see the water on the Pokemon. You can see the scales on the Pokemon. You can see the detail that was not able to be made back then in 1999 with the type of animation they had back then. That alone basically breaks in the third sense of touch. You can sit there and physically imagine what these things feel like, what it would be like to touch them, which is amazing because it helps you and it helps the audience itself immerse themselves more in the movie and make it a much better experience. Now, where the movie, the CGI remake, tanks, is with the sound. The soundtrack alone for the original was phenomenal. You had great songs like Brother My Brother during the climax scene, which brought and struck an emotional chord as you see these clones, which are basically fighting themselves to the death for what other reason but because they're different. And then you have, in this scene, which I'm about to show,
Go, Fruit Root! Razor Leaf! Fine with it.
you have the first fight scene between Venusaur and Venusaur. This is the first time the trainers actually challenge Mewtwo. In the original, you have a calm song that starts off like a regular Pokemon battle. You think, oh, it's going to be nothing. It's going to be just like every battle. It's going to be a little bit of interchange. You know, it's not going to be too bad. The second that the clone Venusaur starts to attack, the music changes dramatically. It's no longer the traditional Pokemon battle song. It's now an intense, eerie song that lets the audience know, holy cow, what's going on? And in one hit, Venusaur is completely knocked out and the clone wins. That subtle tone there in the original movie sets the stage for that battle, letting the whole audience know how hopeless it is for the trainers to defeat Mewtwo. Now, on the remake, the exact same fight scene starts off. The visuals, again, beautiful. The attacks, the movement, they're so well shown. It really does a good job when it comes to that. But where it fails is the sound. In most of this fight scene, there isn't even really any background music to add any intensity to it. Instead of it being a one-shot where it shows how powerful the clone Pokemon are, it's actually an interchange between a few attacks before the clones go down. And finally, when it comes down to it, they're both fantastic movies. They each have their strengths. You have the original that has an amazing soundtrack, it has a great message, and it has an amazing nostalgic effect. You have the new one with the CGI and the visuals that are phenomenal, the detail, the precision. It's great work. And ultimately, the thing that both movies encompass the most is the message that they deliver. That we are all humans, that we need to look at each other for what we have in common, not for what we have different. Because when it comes down to it, there's more in common with every person on this earth than there is differences.